New York City Mayor Eric Adams is set to give an update on the city's budget today.
It's expected to include sharp cuts as the city deals with the asylum seeker crisis.
Mayor Adams unveils his first round of budget cuts and has promised the cuts are painful.
The 5% cuts across the board will affect every agency, sanitation programs, and school budgets. But the most dramatic effect will be on public safety and the police department.
All right, people. So today we got to talk about the sanctuary city of New York and the realization that taking care of hundreds of thousands of people it's expensive. So I know. Every time I do one of these videos, I go through the whole story again. This is going to be a condensed version because I need someone who's watching this video for the first time, who's never watched one of my videos, to understand how we kind of got here. So for those of you who've watched these videos before, bear with me for like 2 or 3 minutes, right? So, as you know, New York State is a sanctuary state. This means that they will not assist the federal government in deportations. Now, they had this policy of welcoming migrants or immigrants with open arms, right? Now, if you've watched one of these videos before, you've probably seen this clip of the New York State Governor, Kathy Hochul, who's literally begging for migrants to come to the city, saying that they're welcome, we can take care of you, we're going to do all this great stuff to you. We're going to roll that clip because I want you to see how committed New York State was to having migrants come and being able to take care of migrants to grow their state. They were essentially the sanctuary state of sanctuary states.
I want people to come here, despite where they came from or despite the circumstances that drove them to this country and to this state. We say you are welcome here. We are welcome with open arms and we'll work to keep you safe. We'll not only house you, but we'll protect you. And the richness of the culture and the diversity and the food and the restaurants that we know are going to be coming because of these efforts are beyond measure. It's an extraordinary part of our story. And it's woven into the story of New York, and it makes us more vibrant.
Now, as we've also documented here on this channel many times, the advocates of the sanctuary state of New York also considered reasonable border policy to be racist and xenophobic. Their words, not mine. Now, when President Joe Biden got into office, the floodgates opened up, right? They were like, hey, we want to let as many people in as possible because we're pro-immigration. We want more immigrants. So Joe Biden did what the Democrats wanted him to do. They opened up the border. And you had millions, and I mean millions of people now crossing the southern border into the United States.
This family soon adding to what has become a record-breaking year of border crossings. In this fiscal year alone, Customs and Border Patrol have encountered more than 2 million migrants, breaking the record previously set last year. Most of those encounters, single men and family units.
Now, the problem with all this is that who's going to take care of these people? Like, you just heard it, 2 million people, right? 1.9, 2 million people. Who's going to take care of all those people? Because those people don't have jobs. They are not legally allowed to work. They're just kind of here in the United States. Now, everyone who does come to the United States and says, hey, I want asylum because I'm being persecuted back in my country, they need to be vetted. We got to figure out if their claim is true or not, right? They could be lying to us. And that takes time. That takes a legal process. And all those legal processes take time. So while they wait, who's going to pay the costs to house them, to feed them, to clothe them? All those things that are needed to go into that while they wait. Remember, they have to wait to be determined if they deserve asylum. This is the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Service website. Now, this is an official website for the U.S. government. Now, if you're an asylee, someone who has been given asylum status here in the United States, you get some amazing benefits. You get welfare benefits, you get travel documents, you get a permanent residence or a green card, you get a social security number, you can actually get asylum for your family members, and you are allowed to work in the United States. Essentially, you get many of the benefits that someone who is a citizen of the United States get if you are deemed to be worthy of asylum. So this is a huge benefit if the government decides to give it to you. So when someone applies for asylum, now, what happens during that 6-month or year time frame in which the government has to determine you deserve asylum, right? Who's going to take care of you? So now this was the problem. See, if you're from Venezuela, as an example, and you make it to Mexico, you're not seeking asylum from Mexico. You've made it to some place where you're not, the need for your asylum isn't there. So the Trump administration and most of the government was like, hey, just let them stay in Mexico, right? Let them stay in Mexico. They'll say they want asylum. We'll vet their claim. If their claim is good, we'll let them in. If it's not, we'll just stay in Mexico. The Democrats said, we should let them into the United States, right? Let's take care of them. We're Americans. This is what we do. We take care of them. So that was the battle that we had going on. Now, the Trump administration kept everybody out, so you had immigration low. Where the Biden administration said, hey, we're going to bring them all in, right? We're going to bring them all in. 2 million people came across the border, as you saw. So this now made a quandary for states like Texas, because all those people were walking into Texas and Arizona, all those border states. So the governor of Texas said, well, let's do this. New York says we want immigrants. They'll protect them. They'll stop them from being deported. We have the money to pay for them. Let's start sending these migrants to places that want them. New York is a prime example. They said they'll take care of them. They said they want them to come here. They said they will not deport him. It's a win-win for everybody. So that's exactly what Texas did. It started shipping the migrants to New York and other sanctuary cities, and that quickly turned into a crazy, crazy disaster. Surprisingly, every one of those sanctuary cities and states started declaring states of emergency, begging for help, almost immediately after they started getting the actual migrants that they wanted. For instance, here's Massachusetts declaring a state of emergency because they got a couple of migrants. Check this out.
Governor Healy just declared a state of emergency in Massachusetts because of the number of migrants arriving in Massachusetts. Healy says they are overwhelming local shelters.
They're here because Massachusetts has and will always be a beacon of hope, compassion, humanity, and opportunity.
It even happened in Chicago. Here's Chicago, again, state of emergency. We're getting migrants. This is crazy.
Here in Chicago, Mayor Lightfoot just issued an emergency declaration in response to the surge of migrants being bused to the city by Texas Governor Greg Abbott.
And Casey Cronus is live from City Hall with the latest on this.
Natalie and Anthony, at least 48 more migrants arrived to the city today, and Mayor Lori Lightfoot says she doesn't expect the buses to stop anytime soon. Just as that surge is expected, the city's 7 migrant shelters and 3 respite sites are now overrun. Since last August, the city has welcomed more than 8,000 migrants, but funding and resources are dwindling.
And obviously, since we're talking about New York, here's New York declaring a state of emergency. We got too many migrants.
The New York City Mayor Eric Adams declaring a state of emergency over the ever-escalating number of asylum seekers coming to the city. The mayor says the shelter system is overwhelmed and that after today, the city will set a new record for the highest number of people ever in the system.
Although our compassion is limitless, our resources are not.
And just like the mayor just said, this is where we're at today. Right? Unlimited compassion, but limited resources. Now, the mayor of New York believes that this is probably going to become a $12 billion problem for the city of New York, because that's how much it would cost for them to take care of all the migrants they got and the ones who are also, they believe, are coming. So that means that where's that money going to come from? It's city services. You have to kind of reshuffle the deck. There's a limited amount of funds you got, but you got to pay for police. And now you got a $12 billion migrant problem that you got to pay for. So that means that some services in New York City are going to have to be dramatically cut. And the reason why is because New York just doesn't have the money to pay for the migrants. Here's what the cuts are going to be looking like.
Every single agency will see its budget shrink by 5% when the mayor unveils exactly what's on the chopping block. There will be another 5% cut in January and possibly another 5% in May. They include a $2.1 billion cut to education, a $1.4 billion cut to the Department of Social Services, $800 million from homeless services, $300 million from the fire department, and $200 million from City Hospital.
Now, let's make no bones about it. These cuts are massive, and they're going to affect the lives of all New Yorkers. But they were warned that open border policies would have an extremely high cost to them. And it wasn't the cost of being compassionate. It was a cost of how are you going to pay to help these people. Remember, the city was paying for migrants to live in hotels. They gave them free health care. They fed them. All of that stuff is not free. Somebody has to pay for it. Now, the migrants were enjoying the hotels until they refused to leave. This is what the migrants who were put up in great hotels in the middle of Manhattan, this is what they were demanding after the city told them that they had to leave those pricey hotels and go to a tent facility that the city built as an emergency provision. Check this out.
He could have easily, along with Governor Hochul, opened up all the vacant luxury apartments. We are on 57th Street right now. This is Billionaires Row. Half of the super towers on this street are empty.
Very basic beds, head to foot, no space in between them. There's 4 bathrooms in the entire facility for 1,000 beds. They've described multiple security gates to get in. They've described that there's only food during limited hours and that sometimes the water runs out. And importantly also, it's cold in there. Despite the mayor's claim that it's heated, they said it was cold in there.
Open up all the vacant luxury apartments. They only deserve the best. So the city, which is paying for the hotels, now has to cut services to continue to pay for the migrants' needs. Check it out.
We're learning more about the steep budget cuts coming from Mayor Eric Adams, calling for 5% cuts in every department, including public safety. This as he continues to make a public appeal for the federal government to step up and help offset the cost of the migrant crisis. Fox 5's Lizette Nunez joins us now from outside City Hall with what the mayor is asking for. Good morning, Lizette.
Good morning, Dan. Well, the budget cuts are far-reaching. We're talking every city agency will be impacted, and this goes into effect immediately.
We're in some serious financial trouble right now.
Mayor Adams making these remarks at a town hall after the city announced major budget cuts. Adams says the migrant crisis is to blame as it continues to put a strain on New York City resources.
The national government should be picking up this tab, and it should not be coming out of the backs of everyday New Yorkers. That is wrong, and that is what is happening.
Now, the city has spent nearly $1.5 billion since last spring to house and assist migrants and asylum seekers. And that includes everything I told you from before: food, shelter, healthcare, clothing, education, and even legal services. That's the cost, the true cost of being a sanctuary city. And the reality is that we as Americans, we want to help people. And that's the truth. We have big hearts. But can we afford to help everyone? See, and I think New York is finding this out now. There's a difference between being compassionate and wanting to help someone and being able to actually do it, right? And New York is unfortunately finding this out the hard way. Let me know if where I'm wrong in the comments section. My name is Nick the Lawyer. I'll see you next one. Peace.